Hi students, welcome back. So we are now at business ethics topic 3. We've covered topic 1 and 2, which talked about morality and the law. We've covered a few normative theory of ethics, including but not exclusive to the egoism theory, the concept of egoism, utilitarianism, the Kantian theory of ethics, and to cap it all off, we talked about virtue theory. Okay, we've also discussed some case studies with regard to the theories itself and how it can be used in terms of making decisions and deployed in terms of the decision-making process, whether as an individual or as an organization. Now we're going to look at topic 3, which is essentially, let me get a hold of my slides here, corporate responsibility. Okay, you've probably heard of the term CSR before, corporate social responsibility. But today we're going to talk about corporate responsibility, which is a little bit bigger and a little bit more of a macro level view of the responsibility of a corporation or the responsibility of a company as a whole. The learning objectives are as follows: to define and understand the corporate social responsibility and the corporate moral responsibility, to define the broad view and narrow view of economic views. So you might want to highlight this in your notes if you have it with you right now. Understand the importance of institutionalizing ethics within corporations. Explore the whole idea behind the stakeholder approach and the basic understanding of the stakeholder approach towards corporate governance. But the gist of the entire thing would be a focus towards what is the broad and the narrow view when it comes to the implementation of corporate responsibility. Okay? Now, for a corporation, the world has no borders or central governance, right? You can do business with any corporations anywhere in the world. There's no limitations there's no geographical limitations, except unless, of course, if you're operating in a brick and mortar store, right? Or you're selling a food cart somewhere. Otherwise, there is no limitation as to where you can operate your business. You can cross borders, you can conduct your business in another country, you can set up franchises, you can pretty much do whatever you want, right? Your brand does not have to live within where you are. It can transcend geographical limitations. I'm sure you understand that. Corporations represent also another source of political and economic power. Okay? Don't forget that what makes the world go around is our economy, is our economic system, which is capitalism essentially, and businesses run the economic system. Businesses, the capitalist system basically consists of small little businesses and of course big major corporations as well. So you cannot run away from being influential in terms of political outcomes and political powers. And of the world's top 10 economy, about half of them belong to corporations. Okay, what that tells you is that economies, the largest economies in the world, right, the US economy, the China economy, right, of the world's top 10 economy systems, right, 50% of them belong into the hands of corporations, not governments, right? Not government import exports, not GDPs, but we are talking about company businesses, right? That's a big deal. That's a lot of the world's money revolving around how companies do businesses. Okay. Now, that being said, what is a corporation? A corporation is simply an entity, but it is an entity that can endure beyond the natural life of its members. And what is interesting is that it can sue and be sued as an entity. It shares a lot of characteristics with a normal human being. Okay, it's the, as far as we know, it's the only thing in the world where the natural, right, shares with the non-natural, which is a corporation. So humans can buy and sell, companies can buy and sell, right? Humans can sue or be sued by other people, right? Corporations can sue and be sued by other corporations. You know what I'm getting at here, right? You can buy land, corporations can own lands, right? A human being can have properties, corporations can have properties. Okay, humans can borrow money, corporations can borrow money. So you see, there's a lot of similarities between human beings and companies. But there is one thing that companies can do, humans cannot do, right? And the one thing is, corporations can outlive the lifespan of any individual. Okay, of course, every now and then you see corporations that does not last long, right? In fact, the average lifespan of any organizations nowadays is about 30 years, right? It was much longer back then, but now the average lifespan of an organization is about 30 years. But in general, the potential that an organization have to outlive any individual is there, right? So what that basically means is that Steve Jobs, right, who the genius that he is now gone. Apple is still around, right? One day, Bill Gates will no longer be with us. Microsoft will still be around. Okay, Thomas Edison, the inventor of the light bulbs, right? He's no longer around, obviously, but we still have light bulbs. So the organization, the products can always outlive its founder, can always outlive its workers, its employees, and its members. Okay, that is one thing that humans cannot outperform an organization. All right, so the term limited liability also means that members are liable for the debts of the corporation, but only up to the extent of their investment. You've probably heard of the term, right? Private limited, right? Or sorry, the Coca-Cola private limited, for example. What that basically means is that the liability of that corporation is only limited to the investments that its members made or its shareholders make. Okay, so say for example, if I'm invested in Coca-Cola for 10% of the shares, my liability is 10% of the debt. Okay, so if I can pay off 10%, my liability is gone. Shareholders or the bank, the money lenders, they can't come after me. They can only come after me for the 10% of the debt. So you understand me so far, right? So that's what liability means, and it's been a great clause in ensuring that the opportunity is always there for businesses can go bankrupt, but not the owners, not the people. Okay? Corporations have their existence officially recognized by the law. Right? So what that basically means is that by being recognized by the law, they have a name, they have a status, right? They have on record that this organization exists. Okay? And the only way that this record can cease to exist is by the law as well. So what that basically means is that you can take away the product, you can take away the building, you can even take away its people. The organization will still exist. The entity will still exist in the eyes of the law. All right? Shareholders are entitled to, of course, dividends from profits only when dividends are declared. It's quite normal. Typically happens by the end of the year. Corporations may either be for profit or non-profit. Can be privately owned, fully or partly owned by the government. All right? So let's look at one example. Apple. Probably some of you already have 1, 2, if not 3 products that is from this organization, right? So Apple, as of early this year, they are worth $1.3 trillion. If you don't know how many trillion, if you don't know how many zeros that you have in a trillion, it's about 12, right? You have 9 zeros in a billion. You have 12 zeros in $1 trillion. So Apple is also one of the first company in the world. In fact, they are the first company in the world to ever hit the $1 trillion evaluation. So they're worth a lot of money. Comparatively, now this data is a little bit dated by now, but comparatively to the GDPs of what an entire country makes, you look at Norway, you look at Sweden, you look at Saudi Arabia, Switzerland, Netherlands even, they're not even close to the amount that Apple makes within a year. which is $806 billion, right? That's Apple's market cap in 2017. $750 billion is how much the Netherlands is worth in 2017. Okay, so the worth of an organization can far exceed the worth of even a nation if you evaluate it in market value. Okay, so comparatively to people, to individuals now, talking about billionaires and the richest people in the world, like Charles Koch, Mark Zuckerberg, founder of Facebook, right? Armancio Ortega, the owner of Zara, all right, and these brands. Warren Buffett, Bill Gates. Apple is way up there. So what that tells you is that an organization can also far exceed the value and the wealth of any one individual or a combination of richest individuals in the entire world. So that's a big deal. That's a lot of money that we are talking about here. So with that amount of wealth, should great wealth come with some degree of social responsibility? That's an interesting question to ask, because for many of us, we think of our money as our own, right? We are not responsible to other people, but are we not? Okay. I get that, we work hard to make ends meet, right? So we work hard to get our own income, especially in situations such as this. So every dollar counts. But if you are in a position where you have way more than you will ever think you need, right? So let's say you have, I don't know, $2 million, $3 million, $1 billion in the bank, right? I'm just throwing out large numbers here. Numbers that you're never going to finish spending for the rest of your life. Okay. Do you then at some point feel like, as an individual, do you feel like there is a responsibility in you to make sure that others, there are other people that needs to be taken care of? Okay? There are other areas in the world that perhaps you can lend a hand financially. Should that sense of responsibility comes to you? It's a great quote, right? In a Spider-Man movie once, with great power comes great responsibility. Right? With great money comes great responsibility. But the question is, responsibility to who or to whom? Is it to the people around me? Is it to the community? Or is it to the world at large? The same question should also apply, right, in this context, which is organizations like Apple, like Microsoft, right? With great wealth that they have, should it come with some sense of responsibility towards others in the world? Whether it is other organizations, its employees, or the society around them, right? The infrastructure around which their office is based in, around which their operations are based in, should there come with some sense of responsibility? The short answer to that question is always going to be yes. To make the world a better place, it should come with some sense of responsibility. Now, how do you go about dispersing that responsibility? Okay, and the big question is, to who directly are you responsible to first, then second, then third? Or is it everyone is fair? Those are questions that needs answering, right? So organizations or corporations, they are legal agents, but do we look upon them as moral agents? Should they hold some kind of a moral stand? They can, right? They do have principles. They can choose to do business with some groups, not choose to do business with other groups, right? But are they in a position where they can say, this is what we believe in, you should believe it with us? Okay. Are they in that position to do that? Okay. Should they be held, going to the last line here, should they be held responsible for their action? Of course they do. Okay, of course they do. companies, they make decisions sometimes. They sell a lot of products. They sell us their phones, for example. But when their products do us harm or does not live up to certain expectations, should they be held responsible for it, considering that we are the end user? Of course, the answer is yes, right? But we're not talking so much on responsibilities on what they sell, but it's more of a fact that responsibilities on what they do for the communities around them, okay, and for the world at large. Okay, so as an individual, right, if you are working in those organizations, or if you're working in your company for that matter, okay, where you are employed at, there is a term called vanishing individual responsibility. And what that basically means is that because of the sheer size and the impersonal structure of a corporation, okay, it can result in your responsibility being slowly diminished or possibly even diffused. And what that tells you is that um, you know that feeling when the enthusiasm that you go into an organization for the first time, when you join, when you start your job for the first time, you think to yourself, ooh, I want to do well. I want to stay here for the long term. You know, I have a goal. I want to make an impact, and I want to be recognized for my job. I want to help the people around me. You go into a job with great amount of enthusiasm, right? But after week one, the first month, the first year, second year, you notice that you slowly start to notice how things work. You slowly start to notice that your part is, only limited to a small amount of, it's a small piece of a big puzzle, for example. And slowly but surely, you start to realize that your impact is slowly being diminished. Your influence in the organization is not that much after all, unless, of course, you're holding a high ranking position. But again, if you are just one piece of a big moving puzzle, you slowly come to the feeling and realization that your responsibility is slowly vanishing. Okay, and it will creep in the idea of, ah, man, this is not my area. You get to do it. You do it. It's not my job. It's not my department. It's not my expertise. Why not get HR to deal with this? This is not our area. Once we settle it, we pass it on to another department. You start to think of all these things, right? So that's basically what vanishing individual responsibility is. And if every single individual thinks the same or behaves the same, right? If every single individual thinks or behaves the same, then we are in trouble, because what is a company made of? A lot of individuals, right? Its workers, its employees, its management, the staff, and of course the CEO. So if everyone thinks the same way, then the organization will slowly lose its voice. So it takes a great amount of leadership and management skills to rally its troops, rally its workers, rally its employees to make sure that we are all in the same boat, realize the situation that you're in, realize the goal of the company, realize what the company stands for, and have a passion to advance the company's goals, to advance the company's vision, for example. So I hope you're following me so far. Okay. So there are essentially two major views in responsibilities. Okay, there are essentially two major views in responsibility. And what I mean by responsibility here is the responsibility of an organization towards uh, its internal, right, internal responsibility and external responsibilities. Okay, so let's start off with we have two here: broad view and narrow view. So if you have your highlighter with you, please do highlight this in your notes: broad view versus narrow view. Okay. Now, this person that you see on the screen right now, his name is Milton Friedman. He is a very, very famous economist. In fact, if memory serves me right, he might have even won a Nobel Prize. Might have even won a Nobel Prize, right? So his contribution to the understanding and the academic side of economic studies is tremendous, right? Now, he suggested one concept that has literally stood the test of time, right? Milton suggested that a company's sole responsibility, okay, an organization's sole responsibility, is to make sure that you make money. Okay, let me reiterate that. The single most important responsibility of any organization, if you are, it doesn't matter whether you're profit driven or not, is to make sure that you are profitable, make money. Okay, so what that means is that all your resources, all your manpower, your objectives, your products, all that need to make sure that you are going towards the realm of profitability. The company first and foremost needs to make money first. Forget about responsibility. Okay, forget about making sure that your employees are happy. Make sure that the company makes money first. Now, I know this can come off sounding a little bit selfish, right? This can come off sounding a little bit disingenuous, okay, self-interested perhaps, but there is a point to Dr. Friedman's concept, okay? What he's suggesting is basically the narrow view of corporate responsibility, also known as profit maximization. So again, highlight this in your notes if you have it. In summary, what it means is that a business has no social responsibilities other than to maximize its profits. Let me repeat that. A business has no social responsibilities other than to maximize its profits. The purpose of any business is to make profits for its shareholders, aka the owners. And if you are part of the management, not the owner, your only duty is to protect the interests of its shareholders. This is where the term shareholder perspective is born. Okay? Shareholder perspective is born. The shareholder approach is born. They're all in the same term. Okay? Shareholder approach, shareholder perspective, profit maximization, narrow view, they're all the same thing. It's basically prioritizing everything that the company has into making sure that it is profitable. Okay? Now, does that mean that you ignore everything else all the time? Question is no. Okay? The answer is no. Once you are profitable, okay, once you are sure that the organization will maintain profitability for some time, then you can perhaps allocate certain resources or shift some of the focus towards social responsibility, such as, I don't know, employee happiness, employee welfare, healthcare, making sure that the engagement levels are good in the company, things like that. But all this, company D&Ds, for example, all this only after you make sure that your organization is making money. Because, think about it from this perspective. If your company does not make money, right, it's pointless to do all the other things because you cannot, number one, you cannot fund it, right? Number two, you are basically heading the organization towards a greater amount of debt. You're digging a bigger grave for the company, essentially. Okay? Because you cannot afford to do all those other things. All right. So the priority is for profit and profit only. Okay? The problem that happens with the mentality of profit maximization is that it does not encourage the idea of social responsibility. Okay? It doesn't even touch on how you should go about ensuring that you fulfill your social responsibility. It doesn't even encourage the feeling that you should take care of other people. It only thinks about making money and money. So it's always about more money. How can I make more? How can I focus my organization on more profit? Things like that. So it it runs the risk of the organization being overly focused on making profit at the expense of the overall happiness or job satisfaction, things like that for its employees. Okay, so that's the problem. And the third point is that the only obligation that a business has to other businesses is to stay within the rules of the game. Okay, so in a nutshell, what Friedman suggested is that go for profit all the time. Okay, just make sure that you don't break the law doing it. That's the point. Don't commit fraud, don't go bribe people, things like that. Okay, stay within the rules of the game. So that's essentially, I think that covers my view on narrow view. Okay, that covers the point on narrow view. Let me move on to my next slide here to give you an opposing view. Okay, so you've all heard of this brand before, right? Marks and Spencer. You've all heard of it. Probably even seen it if you've been into our Marina Square campus. The Marks and Spencer brand. Now, it's not as prosperous as it once was back in the early 2000s and the late 1990s, but it's still there. It's hanging in there, and it's still providing relatively good quality products for its customers. Now, back when it was in its early founding days, its founder, Simon Marks, he likes to do this thing where he walks around his retail outlets. He's one of the founders of Marks and Spencer, so he likes to walk around one of his retail outlets and just to check out how everyone's doing. Not check up on people, but check in on them, asking them how they're doing. You know, can I help you? Do you run your business a little bit better? Things like that. Can I help you in your job? You know, is the environment doing all right? Is the AC enough? You know, things like this. Is it? Do you feel happy working here? You know, basically caring for its employees, which is a good thing, basically. So one fine day, he was doing one of these rounds that he always does, and all of a sudden, one of the female employees just fainted. She was doing her thing, and then all of a sudden dropped down, boom, fainted. Right. So upon finding out why, the organization sort of realized that this lady has been working 3 jobs to support a husband who is crippled due to the war that the husband returned from, right? Lost her limbs. And she has to support the family by working 3 jobs. She's not using her lunch money so that she can save up and feed the family at the end of the day, right? Very noble thing of her to do. Upon finding out what happened, this is what Simon Marks did. He immediately instructed that the company allocate a lot of its resources into making sure that every single Marks and Spencer outlet now provides free food. Okay, has a kitchen or a cafe section dedicated for its employees. They can eat anything they want. They can have a rest anytime they want, as long as they get the job done, of course. But they have access to all this free of charge. And this was implemented across all of their Marks and Spencer outlets. And that is why today, right, you see all of the Marks and Spencer retail outlets, they now have a food and beverage section, right? They now have a section where you can buy biscuits. They now have a section where you can buy wine, drinks. Some outlets now even have a cafe. Okay, so that's where this initiative was born. It cost Simon Marks a lot of losses at the beginning, a lot of money even. But to him, it's better that the organization spends a bit of money now or even loses a bit of money now. But in the long run, I maintain the loyalty of my employees. I maintain the overall health and job satisfaction of my employees. And that will in turn bring me customers in. and they will take care of my customers for me instead of me looking up, checking up on them all the time, making sure that they do their work. Okay? So that is actually called the broad view of corporate responsibility. The broad view sees human creation, right? And is invented. Corporations are viewed as an invention to serve human needs. Businesses, apart from making money, has other obligations in addition to the pursuit of profit. Okay? And they have an obligation to consider the interests of all groups upon which they have an impact on. And businesses has a duty to consider its impact on society. So what that basically means is that you have profit maximization and you have broad view of corporate responsibility. Okay? So narrow and broad. You cannot say that one is better than the other. Okay? Although one is more noble than another, profit maximization basically tells you go make your money first. It is important to make sure that your organization is profitable, and then you go think about the other stuff. Okay? But in broad view, the focus is more on you take care of the people first. All right? Make sure your employees are happy. Make sure they're healthy. And in the long run, the loyalty that you get from them, the job satisfaction that you get from them will translate into your company making profit, will translate into the customers being taken care of by happy employees. So it's just different approach. Okay? Different approach trying to get to the same thing, which is profit at the end of the day. Another example I like to give you is this person by the name of George Merck. He's one of the founders of Merck Pharmaceuticals. Of course, he's no longer with us. But Merck Pharmaceuticals is one of the largest pharmaceutical industries, companies that we have today. They produce a lot of drugs. Some of them you might even consume before, antibiotics, penicillin, Panadol, you name it. Okay, so it's a big organization. This lady standing at the center of these two men, right? One of the men here is the husband. Her name is Ann Miller. Ann Miller, during the year of 1940 something, if I'm not mistaken, it was the early 1900s. Yeah, so the world's resources is being ravaged by the war, and people are getting sick a lot. And she was, at the time, right? Ann Miller was on her deathbed. She was almost going to lose her life. 10 days in a row, high fever. She was suffering from some kind of a pneumococcal, streptococcal virus infection. So something that people haven't found a cure yet at the time. Okay? Now, during that same time, a new drug was being tested. It was very, very rare, very inaccessible at that time, right? But she happened to be, excuse me, so she happened to be one of the recipients of that drug during that time. Okay? You might have heard of that drug. It is called penicillin, also known as antibiotic. Okay, also known as antibiotic. So Ann Miller eventually became the first patient to be saved by antibiotics. Okay, she was near death. But that drug at that time, because it was so obscure, she managed to get a tiny amount of it, right, and saved her. And of course, a couple of days later, the temperatures dropped sharply overnight. She recovered, and she was basically had a full recovery and had a very happy life in the end. Now, George Merck realized what happened, and he came to the realization that, this could potentially be life-saving. Okay, and what he did was he bought the rights, the recipe essentially, to produce the drug, and he immediately instructed Merck Pharmaceuticals to mass produce antibiotics so that other people can have access to it. at a nominal price. Yeah, it's not free, but at a price that is very, very accessible for other people. What else did he do? Not only did he instruct his own company to do it, he also made the recipe for antibiotics open source, that other organizations also can make and sell antibiotics. This exponentially increased the supply of antibiotics in a very short span of time. Now, if George Merck were to think of profit maximization, what would the approach he would have taken? Okay, if George Merck were to look at it from a profit maximization approach, he would not share the recipe right away. He would, in fact, keep the recipe, make it exclusive, make it a copyright to Merck Pharmaceuticals, maybe sell the recipe at a very expensive rate, sell the drugs at a very expensive price, so that he can maximize profit as much as he can. Okay? But he did not see it that way. To George Merck, right? To George Merck, this guy over here, to him, findings such as this, having the capability of creating such or giving people drugs that is so useful, right? It's almost like finding the cure to cancer. And to him, the responsibility stretches far beyond that of making sure the organization makes money. Now, keep in mind, he's not doing charity here. He is still making a lot of money from the sale of the drugs. Okay? And still does. Point is, he understands that there is no need to make that much amount of money. Okay? At the cost of other people losing their lives. So what he did was just make the recipe, make the formula open source, so that other pharmaceutical companies can jump in the bandwagon, increase the supply of antibiotics in the world so that more people get access to it. That basically sums up the broad view of corporate responsibility. Do you have a responsibility to make profit? Yes. But you will also have a larger scope of responsibility towards people within your organization, such as what Simon Marks did for Marks & Spencer, and to the community and the world at large. Okay? So that's basically the story of Simon Marks and Marks & Spencer. Let's look at other examples that are a little bit more current in the world right now. You've probably all have heard of COSTCO, or have seen the brand COSTCO. It's a very prominent retail outlet in the US. Now, Costco is a little bit different from other supermarket chains in the United States. Now, for one, Costco is one of the largest, highest paying ones, apart from, I think, together with Amazon. They're one of the highest paying salaries for groceries in the United States. Target paying 12, Walmart is the lowest. Although, based on size, Walmart is the largest grocer in the entire United States. But they're one of the lowest paying ones. And another thing that Costco does is, you know how organizations at certain, you know how retail outlets, right, in certain times of the year, they aim for those times to be the highest in terms of shopping activities for a lot of people. So times like, I don't know, Christmas, Thanksgiving, Chinese New Year, the end of the year, right? Holidays. So those are basically high traffic moments where you will expect a lot of businesses to be done during those times, correct? So you would make sure that your retail outlet remains open during those days, especially on holidays, right? Black Friday, for example, right? Thanksgiving, you would want to make sure that your company remains open because you do the most amount of business for during those times. But Costco has a different approach. Costco chooses to close on those days. New Year's Day, Easter, Memorial, Thanksgiving. and Christmas. Costco chooses to close their business during those days. The reason that Costco provided was that while they can really make a lot of money by remaining open, Costco believed that it is more important for its employees, all of its employees, that you spend time with your loved ones and your family during those important dates. So you see how priorities can change here in terms of how much money you should make. Does that mean Costco is not profitable? No, they are profitable. Okay, but it's a situation where it comes to a point where they realize how much money they make versus how happy they are. Okay, and there will always be that equilibrium to make sure that you find that balance. The company is profitable, and you make sure that your employees are happy. Okay. Now, these are a few examples that I just given you. And you realize by now that most of my examples are skewed towards supporting the idea of having broad view in your corporate responsibility, right? There are arguments, though, that still supports the idea of narrow view. I'll go through a few of them here. The first one is the concept of the invisible hand, followed by the mentality of this is the government's job. Let them do it. Let them deal with people. You know, we are a business. We are only good at selling our products and making sure that we remain profitable. So we do what we do. The government do what they do, which is social stuff. Again, that's a mentality. Number 3 is the businesses can't handle it. Why? Because they don't have the expertise, and the fear is that they will impose their values on us. Let me go through the invisible hand first. Remember when I talk about the concept of Adam Smith and the idea that all businesses should be self-interested? That idea still holds true, right? That concept still holds true. And what the invisible hand really is it's a market force. Now, do you see this picture of someone selling bread? Okay. So there is an individual here that is selling bread, and someone is buying bread from him for one pound or $1. Okay, so if the entire, let's assume in Singapore, right? If all of Singapore there's only one person selling bread or one company selling bread, everyone would have to go to this organization to buy bread. Everyone can only buy bread from this one seller, right? So what happens? The price can be set at any rate, any logical rate, $10. It can even go up to $10, $20 for a loaf of bread, and people will still buy it. You agree? So because there's only one, there's no competition. What happens if you add in another seller? Okay, because sooner or later, people will start realizing that, man, this bread making business is a lot of money. It's good money, right? So I'm going to join. I'm going to make bread. I'm going to sell bread because I want a piece of that pie. You know what I mean? So I learn, and I now start a bakery on my own. So now there's 2 bread makers in Singapore. So now in order for me to get customers, and I don't need to sell it at $10 a loaf. I'll just sell it at $5 a loaf, half. Now what happens? All the customers will start going to that side. And next thing you know, there is a 3rd bread seller, a 4th bread seller, a 5th bread seller. Okay? And the prices will keep on going up, going down, going up, going down. So you either have to reduce your price or you have to sell a better bread to maintain competitiveness of your business, right? Now, the point is that there is nothing that forces you to change the price. What I mean by that is there is no government regulation, there is no rules, there is nothing that is enforcing you to make those changes. No one is pointing a gun at your head and telling you need to make the changes, right? You can jolly well maintain the price of your bread $10 all the time. No one is going to say a thing. but you know that you need to change, otherwise your business will go kaput, right? So what the invisible hand is, it is an invisible market force that works to stabilize the market, the supply and the demand and the pricing through the natural waves of supply and demand. Okay, just look at how the oil prices work, the oil and gas now works, right? We are in the middle of a crisis, a pandemic, and the oil prices is way down because the demand is way down. Nothing is forcing it, right? There's no government regulation saying the prices must go down. That's the invisible hand at play. Okay, and a lot of businesses sort of think of the idea of the invisible hand as essentially how supply and demand works. It's great that it's there because it sort of forces governments, organizations, companies to adjust themselves depending on market pressures. Okay, so it's a good thing. The invisible hand is a good thing, but sometimes it takes a very, very, very long time for the invisible hand to work its magic. Okay, you don't know when there will be a new player in the game. You don't know when there will be a new bread seller, right? So at some point, you need the government to come in to stabilize the prices. Businesses don't like government intervention. Okay, so businesses like it when they have full control. Quite normal, right? So the government at some point will need to intervene to make sure that the prices don't go way out of hand. So now, say for example, we are in the middle of a pandemic. There are certain things which it is difficult to get, like poultry, eggs, chicken. So a lot of supermarkets are implementing limitations on how much you can buy, but they are not increasing the prices, at least not in Singapore, from what I understand. And even if they do, the increase in prices will stay at a certain cap. It's going to be limited to a certain amount. Why? Because of government intervention. Now, if the invisible hand is at play here, the fluctuation of the prices of eggs, oil, chicken, pork, for example, will go way up, and then at some point it will dive way down. Okay, so that's what invisible hand basically means. And the invisible hand will work very, very well if profit maximization, if the system or the mentality of profit maximization is adopted. If the government comes in and forces their hand on something, it intervenes on the natural flow of supply and demand. Okay, so I hope this makes sense. So it's not a perfect concept to be argued for. So I'll let you take some time to read this page. The next argument is that is in support of the narrow view is just let the government do it. Let the government worry about social problems. We worry about our own business. Corporations, we are profit oriented. We will only profit ourselves. If we intervene, okay, we might result in making society even worse. So a strong system of government should do their job to bring corporations under control. So in terms of social work, right, the argument here is that if companies start to meddle into social issues, it might cause more problems than good. It might cause more harm than good. So the idea here is that just let the government do it. We are not equipped for such things. We don't know the first thing about how to solve the issues of society, to solve the hunger problem, for example. So let the government deal with such things. To compound on that is that this might lead to a intrusive government. If you let the government do everything, eventually they're going to control everything. Okay, and there's always that final question on whether or not can you fully ever trust the government with everything. Now that's a very loaded and subjective question, and it really depends on the society that you're living in at the time. Okay, The next one is businesses cannot handle it from the perspective of expertise and the perspective of imposing materialistic values. Let me touch on the idea of expertise first. The first argument is that corporation executives, they don't have the moral and social expertise to do anything aside from economic decisions. In other words, the financial or the day-to-day business handling of the organization. Other than that, they don't have the expertise to deal with social issues, which is true, but at some point they have to learn. Okay, they have to learn to handle their talent and resources to tackle problems. So you look at the issue of expertise here. What you're seeing in front of you is Google's Project Loon. Okay, Google's Project Loon. It's basically a hot air balloon floating over remote places in the world to give them access to internet. Okay, now Google traditionally is not a networking company. They've always been a software-driven, internet-based company, yes, but they are not in networking and infrastructure. Google don't do that. They sell products, but they don't do infrastructure. Project Loon is a highly infrastructural project to provide internet access to remote places in the world. And that's they can easily argue that they don't have the expertise for it. Okay? But they take it upon themselves, invest the money, learn, so that they can do this for the world. Now, can this be viewed as a ploy for them to make money in the future? They can always make the internet access only to Google access, and that's fine. That's better than nothing, right? That's better than having no internet at all. So if this leads to profitability, again, it's still broad view. Whatever they do still leads to profitability in the long run. It just takes a longer time. And when it does lead to profitability, it's a much more maintainable and stable profit. The same concept with Project Aquila by Facebook. Again, doing the same thing, right? Providing internet access to remote places in the world. Lately, from the whole COVID pandemic, Tesla also took it upon themselves, because the whole of the United States and the world is running short of ventilators for COVID-19 patients. So Tesla also took it upon themselves to make ventilators using car parts, using Tesla car parts. Again, they could have easily said they don't have the expertise to go into the medical profession. But you've seen how a lot of organizations are coming around to make sure that they do their part. Under Armour, for example, is making face masks, right? Tesla making ventilators. A lot of car companies are making ventilators as well. So another example I can quote is our very own Singaporean, right? Tan Ming Liang, where at one point, Lee Hsien Loong, Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong was saying there's too many e-payment methods in Singapore. It needs to be consolidated in one easy way. So the founder of Razer basically took on the challenge upon himself and say that they will do something to roll it out within the next 18 months. And true enough, Razer is looking to implement an e-payment system within this year or the next. Okay, so again, Razer, traditionally a gaming company that does mouse and keyboards and monitors and computers and all, has no idea how to do e-payments, but they take it upon themselves to learn, to invest. They don't have to, but it could result in long-term profitability. Okay? So another thing that corporations typically will give as an excuse is that, if we deal with social issues, corporations will impose their values on society, making them a lot more materialistic. Now, that's always a possible argument, but to be frank, how often does that happen? If you remember, a couple of years ago, there was a great natural disaster that happened in Japan, tsunami, if I'm not mistaken, and one of the biggest apparel brand in the world, Uniqlo, actually step out and gave the victims free clothings, just like that, right? Boxes and boxes of Uniqlo clothing. Their brands are there, but does it mean that they are imposing materialistic values? Are they asking you to buy more things, buy more Uniqlo products? No. If anything, this kind of initiatives makes people want to stay loyal to your brand. And that is a good thing. Okay? So, in a nutshell, the broad view perspective is also the same as a stakeholder approach. Right? While the narrow view contends that a business operates for the benefit of shareholders, right? Narrow view basically makes money for shareholders only, right? Broad view tells you to look beyond its impact of shareholders only. Look at the social impact, look at the infrastructural impact, look at the society impact that your business has. So if you are investing, if you are basically opening a factory in Bangladesh, for example, how in Bangladesh, how are you going to think of growing the society and the infrastructure and the people in Bangladesh? How are you going to educate them? Okay, how are you going to make sure that they get jobs, right? Well-paying jobs, things like that. It goes well beyond making sure that your business can operate at a lower cost. That's why you have your factory over at Bangladesh. You have to think of how you can help grow the economy on where your business is operating at. Okay, so that's essentially what the stakeholder perspective is. The word stakeholder is a word that is derived from the public relations studies. And what that basically means is that every business has to deal with various groups of individuals and various groups of business. So take, for example, if you are a doctor, right? If you run your own GP, you're a general practitioner, you have your own GP, you still need nurses, you still need other doctors, you need to work with the governments, you need to work with pharmaceutical companies to get your drugs, right? So all these groups are essentially various stakeholders that you have to deal with. And what the stakeholder approach suggests or say is that your business should not only be responsible to yourself or your immediate employees, but it also should be responsible to all these stakeholders, to all these groups of people. So when you're making a decision, think about the impact that it would have to the nurses, your employees, your other businesses, your competitors, okay, your supply chains. Think of all these things. You can't just say you make a decision and it's so easily adopted and it won't affect everyone. Okay? So that's essentially the stakeholder approach. I'm going to show you two videos that will be played back to back that will give you an example of how corporate responsibility work from branding perspective, as well as a totally community-based, socially based perspective. Okay, a true implementation of the stakeholder and the broad view of social responsibility. Okay.
અમારી લાઇટનો બી મુસીબત છે રાખો દિવસ બી જોઈએ ને
દિવસે તો છોકરાને પાછું કઈ નવાડવાનું દોડવાનું કઈ રોટલા માગે તેને આપવાનું એવું તેવું કરવાનું બધું
એમના માથે ફીટ એમ કઈ સાપ અંદર ઘૂસી જાય તે એટલે માટે અમારું ફીટ એમ કઈ બારું નહીં રાખતા
લાઇટ નહીં કે કઈ નહીં ફસીને કેરીસન પે કઈ લેવા જાય અજવાળો હોય તો લાઇટ હોય તો છોકરા રમ્યા કરે, અમે અંદર ખાવા કરીએ. ખાતી વખતે બી કંઈ મકોડા પડી જાય એવું તેવું બધું અંદર પડે તે પછી દેખાય ના તે ખાઈ જ જાય કંઈ તેને હું કરી.
હું તો છોકરા રમવા જાય એટલે અંદર તે રમતા નથી ફાતા બરાબર. કોઈ કદાચ હાપ આવ્યો છે કે ડાકુ મારી દે છોકરા તો અમને બધું ખરું નહીં અંધારું પડે એમ ઘરમાં. લાઇટ બે તો બહુ ફાયદા હોય, ઘણો ફાયદા હોય આપણને લાઇટ હોય તો.
Flight is a open source global movement. Under this movement, we use recyclable, low cost, locally available material to provide lighting solution to the areas where there is no light, where the light will make difference to the lives of people. Very simple concept. It's just a PET bottle inserted in a roof. Almost no cost, almost no maintenance, and it's such a simple thing. Where once they see us doing it, they can, just by seeing, they know that they can do it themselves.
So what they are doing, they are taking a Pepsi bottle and they are putting water inside and they are putting it in their roof.
Here the water is acting as a medium. Lights travel from here, medium, it bends. Okay, then it will be refracted in 360 degrees in the room.
હવે અજવાળો આવે તો બધું અંદરનું કામ બધું સારી રીતે થશે એમ.
પછી રોટલા હેકવાનું બી લાઇટ આવે એટલે સારું અજવાળું થાય.
તો લાઇટ આવી તો અમને બી શાંતિ થઈ એમ.
કીડા મકોડા કોઈ જીવજંતર એ બધું લાઇટ આવી તો સારું ને.
It was an inspiration you cannot imagine. So there was light in the house and as well as laughter in their faces.
બોટલમાં પાણી નાખીને પછી ઘર ઉપર મૂકી દે તો પછી અજવાળું થાય એવું પહેલું નહોતું ખબર, પણ હમણાં આવી ગઈ લાઇટ તો પછી એવું લાગે છે કે હા લાઇટ છે કે અજવાળું છે ઘરમાં એવું લાગે છે.
So we are into night solutions also. In these villages we are putting street lights which they can burn during the nights and they can walk through.
If we light up their night, suddenly they have 4 more hours to their life every day.
இப்போதான் புதுசு புதுசாக நாங்கள் பிறந்தது இப்போ தான் நாங்கள் அந்த லைட்டே நாங்கள் புதுசாக பிறந்து உருவாகி பார்த்த மாதிரி இருக்குது.
நம்மளுக்கு கடவுள் குத்துது இந்த ஒரு லைட்டு குத்துக்கிறாங்க.
நம்ம தேய்க்கு ஒரு சாமானமாக அவங்க வந்து கண்ணு பார்த்தா போல.
There you go. So my mic was muted there for a while. So that's the video on Pepsi, right? So you see how the whole argument of this is not, we don't know how to do this. We are not electricians. This is not our areas of expertise. How all that reasoning goes down the drain, right? Because Pepsi basically dedicated an entire team of people to help this community get something very, very essential to all of us, which is light. Okay, it helps them become more productive. It will have a long-term impact on their productivity, the education of their kids. And will Pepsi have a long-term impact in terms of profitability? Arguably, they may not even see this investment come to light, but it will have a long-term impact in the society in them. Right, so the money that they have, the amount of profit that Pepsi has made, has allowed them to impact the society around them. So much so that it's not so much about branding anymore. It's about educating and helping others around them. Okay, so I'm going to show you the next video, which is of a competitor's brand, Coca-Cola. Enjoy.
Night time, I see my wife, my children, everything, my heart cry.
I cannot enjoy father, mother. Always go family help. I know help.
I miss my family.
A lot of people that we approached were actually very pleased to hear about this initiative, and I think it shows that Singaporeans do actually care for the foreign workers in our midst.
Thank you for helping us build our buildings. I see all men run. First time I see helicopter. This one very nice.
Thank you for hard work.
In here, I think more than 2,000 plus workers. So everybody getting cook. We are very, very happy because we thinking still somebody think about us.
So there we go. One example from Pepsi and one that is a little bit more on the branding side, which is Coca-Cola. So, but both of them serves as very good examples and representations on how you can go about and to execute corporate responsibility from various perspectives, whether it's profit maximization or broad view. So I hope this video has explained topic 3 well enough for you. If you have questions, do hit me up on the Collaborate platform on Blackboard. So I'll see you in the next video.